interviewed 4 different women who've been betrayed by their husbands. Here's what one said.
Our son was born, and I remember being awake to feed him in the night, and I noticed the light was on in the office, and I just thought, my husband's awake too. And I opened the door. I saw the computer screen, instantly felt this horrible flood of emotion. I shut the door and walked away.
You're going to want to hear what happens next so that I can continue providing a platform for women to share these important stories. Please like and subscribe and click join to donate. As these 4 brave women share their stories, you're going to notice some patterns that I noticed. They talk about how their body let them know what was going on, even when they couldn't see it, and where they learned the language to describe what was happening to them. Because this also happened to me, before I interview them, I'm going to share a little bit from my story.
I want to go back in time to when I was going through this. I was completely overwhelmed. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know where to turn. Doing my dishes seemed impossible. Being a single mom seemed completely overwhelming. A place like Betrayal Trauma Recovery, this place that I founded, didn't exist. I didn't want to get divorced, and so I was going to 12-step. My 12-step sponsor was talking to me about my character defects. She told me that my character defects were the problem, and if I had God remove those character defects from me, that was my best chance of saving my family. During that time, I was crying a lot. And I just found this recording of my son who pulled out a vacuum and had the vacuum handle as the microphone. Watching that video took me back to that place. Although I'm not going to show you the video, here's the audio recording of that.
If you're feeling sad, it's okay to cry whenever you're feeling sad. It's okay to cry, it's okay to cry. If someone's mean to you, telling me to cry in the pride in the ceiling. Stop! No! You're interrupting it! No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. And if you are a little baby, you can still cry. If you're really, really old, you still can cry. If you're really, really, really young, you still can cry. Yay! I love you, Mom.
He was so brave and so strong. Now he's over 6 feet tall, and he's doing really well. And he is such a good person. I love my children. They are so close to me. I don't think I ever would have had the relationship that I have with them if my ex-husband would have stayed in our home. So if I'm reaching out across the void to you and you're overwhelmed, just let me sit here in this overwhelm with you. You have no idea how you're going to pay the bills if every option seems terrible. I've been there. I felt like I couldn't even say anything. Speaking the truth was getting me in trouble, and I didn't know how to do anything else. There was no other option for me. It was maddening. After a year of 12-step, I started realizing that it wasn't addiction. My husband was abusive. And then I started podcasting and I started interviewing you, women who listened and wanted to share their stories too.
I meet women every day who are in that place where they don't know what's going to happen. They're trying to survive the best way they can. I've interviewed you in those moments, and I've also interviewed you after the fact, years later when you're feeling better. So today I have 4 women from our community who are going to share their stories. Charlotte, Luna, Rhonda, and Cassandra. So they know because they've been part of Betrayal Trauma Recovery. I developed the strategies and I teach that to women now. Our team teaches women strategies in our group sessions. We also have the Living Free workshop, and they've benefited, and so many other women have benefited from the support they receive here at BTR. And so they're going to share their experiences today. Charlotte, let's start with you.
Leon, I'm so sorry. I heard your podcast clip to hear your story today. My heart just breaks. Prior to our engagement and subsequent marriage, he disclosed to me that in his teens and 20s, he had struggled with pornography and compulsive sexual behaviors. And I was young and naive until I said, well, that's fine. It's in the past. And for the first year, he was sober, if you will. I had no idea. But during our second year of marriage, relationally, I felt a disconnection. I remember thinking, I don't believe what you're saying. You're saying one thing, but I'm feeling something different. So I think what I did pick up on was there was a real disconnect emotionally. He was saying all the right things, but I didn't feel it in my gut. And it was shortly after a wedding anniversary when I caught him in a lie that things started to unravel. 3 weeks later, I did find out the truth. I was devastated. I was angry. It was brutal. I would hear the outright lies. It doesn't make sense to me. I think gaslighting is absolutely abusive. What was crazy making for me was, on one hand, here was this respectable, responsible man that I admired, that I respected, that I trusted. My husband was a trained therapist at the time. He worked in clinical mental health. And on the other hand, here was this hidden life that I didn't know about. At that point, the gaslighting and the betrayal trauma just increased exponentially the longer the woman is subject to that man within a lie. The third year of our marriage, I caught him in another lie, and the shame, because even though we as women haven't done anything shameful, so many of us feel ashamed of what our husbands have done. What's wrong with me that I didn't see this? Our only crime is that we trusted, and I can't make a decision right now. So then I watch and wait and see what happens. Is he angry? Is he defensive? Is he blaming? Is he evasive?
Yeah, I was in that boat too. With me, the psychological abuse was so extreme. There was literally not one interaction that I had with him where he didn't gaslight or blame me. But I didn't want to get divorced. So I waited and I watched, and it was really disturbing to watch his decisions. I was shocked. He shut down our bank account. He lied to everybody about what happened. Every single choice he made was like a nightmare. And in fact, he's still lying about what happened years later. He's an attorney, and back then he was becoming a mediator too. And when I found out, I was just like devastated. I thought, he is full-blown gone.
That gaslighting and the blaming are so emotionally and psychologically damaging that the person that you've trusted that's supposed to have your back is actually the one that's tuned against you in such a vicious way. So sorry.
Ditto, Charlotte. I'm so sorry about everything that you've been through. It's so difficult. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you tell her?
Well, I would tell her it's not her fault. I think I would reiterate that to my younger self. It's not your fault, whether it's porn use or other acting out. It's not my fault that I trusted. It's not our fault if they're compulsive liars and deceive us and gaslight us.
Yeah. Thanks, Charlotte, for sharing today. We love having you in our community.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful for BTR. I can't tell you how grateful I am. Thank you.
All right, Luna, your turn. Thanks for sharing today. Why don't you start with how you discovered your husband's so-called addiction?
So like the slowest, most drawn out discovery story you've ever heard. We were married, and I had a feeling like really early, like even on my honeymoon, something's not quite right. But at the same time, just thinking, oh, it's not a big deal. I really don't know what husbands are like. This is my first experience. Just miss those feelings. I was pregnant with our first son. It just happened to be the same year that our house was wired for the internet. And I was big and tired and struggling with my body image. And then my husband was in the office at home, and I remember thinking, what's happening in there? But at the same time, just thinking, whatever he wants to do in there, I don't care. And told myself that for, another 3 years. Kind of embarrassing to go through the slow discovery.
Oh, don't feel bad. Everyone goes through that period where they don't know what to do or they're trying to figure out. I sure did. That's totally normal. That's why it's awesome that you're part of our community, so you can feel like you're not alone, right?
Definitely. So then our son was born, and I remember being awake to feed him in the night, and I noticed the light was on in the home office, and I just thought, oh wow, my husband's awake too. And I walked right over and opened the door, but like instantly felt this horrible flood of emotion. It felt so tangible, and I saw pornography on the computer screen. So now this thing is right in front of my eyes. But I shut the door and walked away. There was an awareness on his part that I had seen what happened. But my mom was in town and she was with us for another week. Like I couldn't go there. And then really I didn't go there. Just going through the motions and coping and existing in busy life, it just kind of dragged on.
Did you have a religious background or an ethical background that caused you to think that pornography in and of itself was wrong? Or was it just an icky feeling from finding that he was viewing pornography?
Definitely the spiritual upbringing was the first thing that made me feel uncomfortable about pornography. That feeling was like just sort of a confirmation of what I believed.
So what happened like years after not talking about it?
Well, I like to say I got a gift. It wasn't in a pretty package with a matching bow, but it was a gift to me, and that's the gift of anger. I ended up being a very angry woman, lived with this constant low level irritation and blow up over little stupid things, and thinking like this anger is scaring me. I was okay being sad, and I was okay being lonely, and I was okay being depressed, but the anger terrified me. I had chest pain, I had insomnia, I had anxiety, especially at night. I would lay in bed at night, just feel like my heart is going to fly out of my chest, and feeling so anxious about the reality of my life that I had coped with for so many years. And so it really was working through owning the reality of my life, where now suddenly I began to feel the effects of that trauma. It was really traumatic to pull my proverbial ostrich head out of the sand. It was a shock. I remember thinking, if we go back, because dealing with what actually is happening in my life felt worse. It really did for a while.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I felt the most trauma after I recognized that what I had experienced wasn't addiction, but it was abuse. I mean, I had been experiencing his emotional and psychological abuse for 7 years, but because I thought it was addiction, I didn't really process what I was going through. And then after we separated and I started to see what it really was, the trauma just kept coming in waves and waves. And it was really intense for a long time.
I was a little bit offended with God that this was my story. I didn't deserve it. I never asked for this to be in my story. And here I was. And how was that okay with him? So I was on the outs with God for trauma as well. I remember thinking, like, if I stay, then at least I can keep an eye on him. And I can sort of be there to protect my boys. That sort of became, if I stay, then I can make sure he's moving forward and my kids don't end up growing up with a pornography addict for a father. Because, whether or not our marriage makes it, that was a big question. I thought, well, if I stay, I can make sure he's really doing the work and he's moving forward, and then that'll make him a better father for my boys. And so I'm staying, like, really to keep an eye on him. Not the best reason, of course, to stay in a little while. The bottom line for me is I didn't know where else to go. It really was the catalyst that forced my hand. and made me say, I need help. I have to get help. Something has to change inside of me. I can't live like this. And that's when I found you. One of the things I love about your stuff is it's small, bite-sized serving of hope. A couple of things to take action on or to reflect on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I created it in bite-sized pieces because when I was going through it, I couldn't really process information. I couldn't read. I was so overwhelmed. I just needed to take one tiny step at a time.
Exactly. In the middle of the trauma, like I couldn't even read 2 pages. You give women something that they could chew and they could swallow, and it would just carry them through one day, maybe help them take one step. And we just need something to hold on to.
So that's why I decided to do a podcast. Hearing other women's stories helps us process what we're going through. The podcast is just one episode at a time. With the podcast, you can listen while you're doing laundry. You can listen while you're vacuuming. With Living Free, you can just do a tiny bit at a time if you want. The total runtime is like 2 hours and 50 minutes. So you can do it all at once or a little bit at a time, however it works for you.
I love that it's so manageable for women in trauma. With your stuff is there is a way for every woman to move forward. It's not about whether or not your relationship is restored, but knowing there is peace available. And regardless of what ends up happening in your marriage, there's a way for you to move forward. There's a life for you beyond this pain and trauma that you're dealing with right now.
Yeah. And you'll have women who will walk through it with you.
Exactly. However your story ends, there is hope. The pain that I experienced, it was so difficult and so altering. But at the same time, I felt like I found a way through. I knew it was something that I had to share.
Well, thank you so much for sharing it. You sharing your story will help other women. So thank you, Luna. Okay, Rhonda, you're up next. Would you mind sharing what helped you heal from betrayal trauma?
It's really hard, Anne, because a big part of trauma and abuse is the chaos inside of ourselves. We don't know which way is up or even where to turn. Coming to a betrayal trauma recovery group is a great place to go because I immediately feel understood. There's not a whole lot of explanation that has to happen when you come to BTR. You see a lot of nodding of heads.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of head nodding and heart emojis going up in group sessions for sure. Yeah. When I was going through it, I really wanted a quick solution. I wanted my family to be put back together again really fast. A lot of women are feeling guilty or feeling pressure to have some kind of timeline for healing. How have you felt about that as you've been attending group sessions?
One of the things I love about BTR is that BTR coaches use methods that have been tried that really honestly work for everybody. But another thing that I love about BTR is that every individual is different. Timing is different. And so a lot of freedom to figure out really what is best for me, just being guided by the coach. That's unique to each situation, but it is not fast for anybody. The BTR coaches, it's a synergistic group. It's a bunch of ladies who come from all different situations who really understand but approach healing from a different perspective. I can get the little gems from each of the coaches. And when I could put a name to what's going on, abuse, once you've labeled it and recognized it, all of those actions, they land on him, not on you.
Yeah, it really helps to know what you're actually healing from. Like you said, abuse. Yeah. So for women listening who are hesitant to call it abuse, they're maybe thinking that he's got childhood trauma or maybe an addiction. Maybe they're looking for a men's program, to get their husband into. Do you have any thoughts for them?
You may label it as, just a little problem that he has, something that he's trying to overcome. But we can't get rid of the effects. Everything is turned upside down and chaotic because that's what abusers do to us. It's so scary to label it correctly because of what the future might bring. You get to decide, and you get to decide again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And your path will lead you. You don't have to be afraid of your past. If you don't want to get divorced, you don't have to get divorced. If you don't want to be separated, you don't have to be separated. I love doing the BTR meditations, the different topics, and the guided meditations help me let go of all of the heavy things and focus on peace and calm. I do the meditations because sometimes we can't get our minds and bodies to do what we know we need to do. Meditation really helps with that. And meditations allow our minds and our hearts to start to release some of the pain.
Oh, that is so great to hear. At some point in my recovery, meditation was like the only thing that helped, which is why I wanted to include it in the Living Free workshop. I'm so glad that you're finding those meditations to be helpful. If you're listening and you're like, where are these meditations? You can go to btr.org/livingfree and you'll find the meditations inside the Living Free workshop. And they provide like immediate peace when you can't sleep or you really need peace right away. I mean, it's really good to feel that peace, especially when we didn't do anything wrong and we feel terrible, but we're always doing the best we can. We've been doing the best we can the entire time.
I love that. I love that. We're always doing the best that we can. We say, oh, I was such an idiot then. No, I was not such an idiot. I knew that my body had stored what my mind and heart couldn't process. And sometimes the miracle is just recognition, but sometimes the miracle is physical healing.
Yeah, I have talked to so many women who had like autoimmune disorders or physical problems. And once they separated themselves from the emotional and psychological abuse, their symptoms just cleared up immediately, which was an absolute miracle. So many women are praying for a miracle, maybe a physical miracle of healing. We were gardening and my son said to me, Mom, this garden is a miracle. It's so beautiful. And he said, do you know what makes the miracle happen? And I was like, what? This is the same son that you heard earlier on my recording. He said, we do these little actions of planting these little seeds and watering, and then we hope that it will grow and fruit something good. And then the miracle occurs. And I was like, wow, you are so wise. When I was thinking about the Living Free strategies, I thought about the Israelites. There was a miracle that they could leave, but they actually had to like pack up their bags and actually physically walk out. God didn't just like, teleport them to the promised land. They had a lot of work they had to do to get there, which was miserable, but eventually they did get to the promised land. So as we're thinking about miracles, always remember the planting of the seed, or that we need to pick up our bags, or whatever it is that we need to do, even though it's not our fault, in order to receive the miracle into our lives. I think the most important thing is to focus on not the outcome, but a state of being. Like, we want the miracle to be emotional safety, not necessarily saving our marriage or getting divorced. Then we take steps toward emotional safety and we can see the miracle occur in our lives. And we're not tied to any outcome. We just hope for emotional safety for you and your children.
And you pointed out, if we put our work towards a state of being rather than a specific outcome, God's going to grant that for us as we work towards it. And that's where talking with people who are safe, like BTR coach, that's a huge miracle.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. I hear so many women who come to BTR groups say, like, it's so hopeful. I feel hope for my life again. Yeah. And that's why I appreciate so many of you writing a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts for this podcast, or doing a review on Spotify, or reviewing one of my books on Amazon, because as you help get the word out, then other women can feel this hope too. Because all of us have felt like that overwhelm and just absolute like sadness. And then when women do find BTR through that, they tell me over and over again, I just wish I would have found it sooner. I wish I would have known sooner. So thank you to those of you who helped me get the word out so that we can help other women find it as soon as possible so that they can have this information. And that being said, I always tell women, like, you found BTR at just the right time for you. Like, let's just trust in the timing of the universe. It brought you, Rhonda, to us right at this time. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you, Anna. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I love BTR.
Thank you. All right, Cassandra, it's your turn now. Go ahead.
Yes, I am a survivor of betrayal. Betrayed by 2 different men, but the emotional infidelity of one that I was engaged to at the time was terribly wounding for me. I didn't understand what was wrong, really. We went to 2 different couples therapists to try to get help for what I now call emotional domestic violence through his infidelity. And it was unclear if it was a physical infidelity. It was absolutely clear it was at least an emotional infidelity. I was just called too sensitive or overreactive, and neither therapist could see it. But at the time, I was too dependent on him to leave. I just couldn't imagine life without him. And eventually he broke up with me, which was a great gift he gave me at that time. And then another man's sexual infidelity, which was incredibly painful. Though thankfully by that time, I was in a different place. I was able to be more independent on my own. And so I was able to end the relationship.
With your experience with the therapists that weren't able to identify the abuse in the betrayal, did you feel betrayed by them as well?
I felt angry. I felt enraged, but because they were in an expert position and I was struggling, I didn't know for sure. I mean, I guess I can look back and say that they tried the best they could, but I think that healing from betrayal needs to be looked at from a domestic violence lens. Now, looking back, I think they lacked insight, they lacked training, they lacked perspective. It certainly was therapy-induced trauma. Through gaslighting, it felt traumatic at the time, and yeah, it did feel like a betrayal.
As you know from group sessions, so many women have that experience of the therapist not recognizing this as domestic abuse, which is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. In a group, we were sharing stories about how many therapists had blown us off. I think the most was 6. Group is where we're feeling safe so we can define what fits and what doesn't to know where to get relief. Group is very helpful to talk about what it's like to be betrayed and unhook the blame of self that the addict, the person doing the betraying, can place on us, or the therapist who doesn't understand, or the judgmental culture. So definitely support groups have been really powerful. I think part of the problem is we don't talk about it. So to hear women talk about things that they did at the encouragement or coercion of their sexually addicted husband that made her feel uncomfortable, regretful, or ashamed. Like looking at pornography with her husband. She didn't want to, but she did it because he was so insistent.
Yeah. What you're describing is sexual coercion. So in group or in individual sessions, women are really lucky at BTR to have coaches who understand, our team understands, to relieve us all from the guilt of being coerced when we really didn't understand what was happening.
Yeah, I hear about a lot. We talk a lot about what does the sex addict do, and all of that can also evoke great shame. I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he did that to me. We feel so much guilt and shame. Sex addicts can be relentless, and we can be threatened or blackmailed or chronically manipulated, and it can be overwhelming. And I think that's one thing that is missed in the conversations of so-called, porn being an okay way to explore sexuality and there's no harm caused by it. For me personally, I only worry about the labels as much as they help me. Part of healing from betrayal trauma is about trying to get our stories out there.
Thank you so much